The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Planted with Sarah Payan. I'm Sarah Payan, your host, and today I'm really excited to have a very special guest out of Canada. We have Renee Gagnon, the first federal license holder in the world, number 005. I'm so excited to have your brilliant ass on the show today.
Very too kind. Thank you. I'm honored. Your roster of prior guests is quite stunning, so I'm honored to join the collective.
Now, first question, before we get into all the stuff that we're going to dig into today, what was your first cannabis experience?
Oh, it was culture shock for me. I'd moved out from Alberta, so as a prairie kid, and I had moved to the ritziest part of Victoria and wound up going to Oak Bay High School. And on the first day, somebody asked what kind of pot I smoked. And I was stumped because there's kinds. That's how naive I was. And I didn't try it then, but 6 months later, we moved north to a place called Shawnigan Lake, which is almost identical to the Emerald Triangle part of California, climate-wise, culture-wise. Lots of folks mysteriously came up during the 60s and didn't go back to the States for some reason. And so, yeah, and they wound up growing a lot of cannabis and being part of the community here. So I find a lot of resonance when I do interact with the folks from the hills down in Cali. Their family, the earth mothers, they're so familiar to me, their language and feelings. So I grew up with that. And so I started smoking pot in grade 9. And so 1981. And so a little while back, and I fell in love. And it was the same year as the Apple II computer was unleashed on the school. And my obsession for the next 30 years was, how do I grow cannabis with a computer? That was when it happened. It set my brain on fire. I understood those two things perfectly. I understood how cannabis made me feel, that it was a product, and that also you could use computers somehow. And it just set me on a lifelong weird patchwork journey until I got to do all that and basically grow cannabis inside a giant computer.
That's awesome. When you're mentioning the Apple, it just reminds me of when those came out. I was in 5th grade, and that's when we were doing Oregon Trail, and I was like, getting high and playing Oregon Trail would be
right?
Interesting.
It's the future. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah. If we only knew.
I know. Well, and thinking about, like, I think a lot of people don't think about some of the parallels between the Back to the Landers that are up in the Emerald Triangle and then, the folks that were in Canada that had left the States. And there was a lot of things that were happening at the same time that we don't have a lot of conversations about.
Constant parallelism. I found it especially in cannabis because BC Bud became notorious.
Yes.
And it was the black market export across the border. So pure black market, they were known as the Union. And it was full gang. And I had a cigar shop at one point in the 90s, which was another interesting boom. And we had a cigar lounge. And I had the police chief from Bellingham in there smoking Cuban cigars one day because he was being naughty. And he was livid at British Columbia for its cannabis culture because gangs were coming up from LA to his town, the border, and they were swapping key for key cocaine.
Really?
Yeah, that was conversion price. So the gangs here were buying coke for the price of weed and then smuggling it back to hurling to Canada. So it was bad for the police and the border and everything else. But the reality is I tried BC Bud once in Vegas, and the person was so thrilled and proud to show me this. And it was the nastiest little dried up nug because it's Vegas, right? Zero humidity. And this had been at the bottom of a baggie since, Christ was a cowboy, and it was just a rock. But that brand was useful for the industry, and BC has attempted to rub that in people's noses for a long time, but it unfortunately comes with a counterculture anti-business fishhook. And if you ever want to shoot yourself in the face, say out loud in Canada or the United States, I hate MSOs or LPs. I also have product in 8 provinces and 5 states. You're an MSO. You're an
Yeah.
LP. What? And that's part of the dissonance is I'm good, you're bad. And that pharma, evil pharma. Okay. I've been called that. I had literally a 3,400 square foot medical cannabis operation because that was the requirement of the law. We had to involve doctors because that was the law. But I had death threats when I first got my license. The police had to provide protection. Why? Evil pharma. Does this look pharma? I wasn't ever from pharma, had no pharma background. But because we were a corporation, which was also a legal requirement to get a license, not a personal life choice, we're not all born corporations. Some of us transition later in life. It was just a requirement, and the government wanted that because they can punch a corporation.
Right.
You have a
Right.
board of directors, legal requirements. They can fuck you up good. As an individual, squishy, right? And so there was a lot of choices. And so that hatred anti-corporate stuff is ironic now as people try to get their brand, their legacy brand. You're combining 2 terms that don't fit together. You were a counterculture, but you're a t-shirt now with a trademark symbol. Irony. So that's kind of why I don't like poking fingers or throwing rocks. You'll notice in all my social media posts, I call out industry behavior, not companies.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because when you punch a company, you indirectly hit people. There's perfectly good people at that company, good people doing good stuff that really believe in what they're doing, that are showing up every day being good people. Don't punch them in the face. That's not nice.
Yeah, no,
They're
it's true.
right?
Yeah.
And yet that's the problem. You look at LinkedIn, it's all these peanut gallery people. This company's shit. This company's going to own this. Okay, this month? Cool. What's this relentless, empty competition and dick wagging? Because that's really all it is. It's dick wagging. And that I'm calling it out as what it really is. It's pointless posturing.
It is.
But the metrics of profitability, I'm sorry, all the ones that are crowing about it now, oh, I remember you before COVID. Oh, I remember you with your fortress plays and your acquisition strategies. I do remember you also, but I also remember you denigrating profitability. Okay. It's just that now interest rates have risen above 0. That's making your story harder to sell, the dickwag harder to monetize, isn't it? You're having to compete against women and people of color who've always had to live on profitability and balance sheets because the bank won't talk to you, the government won't help you unless your math aligns. So now you're competing for real on those metrics you used to talk about. It's uncomfortable. I'm just saying, I empathize. I feel
Yeah.
for you. Yeah.
But it's when I think about everything that you just said, and I got to agree, LinkedIn is a hot mess. There are times where I'm like, well, there's no filter. Like I before I post something, I read it over 3 times. I'm like, who will I affect? Because words have meaning. And I think if we spent more time instead of tearing each other down and competing in unhealthy ways, because there is healthy competition, as we know, we could be, instead of complaining about policy, we could actually be working together to change the way it looks.
Utterly. The divide and conquer has been our own fault. Why? By first saying this version of cannabis good, this version bad. The weird part about Canada was by having the federal government make arbitrary, stupid law, at least we have the same thing to complain about. It's uniform. Hemp is part of cannabis. We're not having the state. It's not written down specifically, so it's legal.
Yeah.
We don't have that here. We just assume that anything fun will be against the law and regulated, and we won't be allowed to do it. We're trained that way. You're overly optimistic that because it wasn't written down, let's full bore right in the corner store with THC beverages. And then when they get slapped, but you're taking away our thing. And I'm like, but you weren't allowed to do that thing. Well, no one said we couldn't. That's not permission.
No.
And that's kind of where I think women and people of color and the rainbow folk, we come from behind. Why? We follow all the rules. People of color, they have a whole handset that they're taught from childhood of who not to piss off, who not to offend, how to talk, how to code switch, how to address authority. And a lot of us come to that later in life. And the problem is when you run up against the machinery that's there.
Yep.
And you lack those skill sets, you're filtered out.
That it's an interesting thing because it's in order to, as somebody who isn't the favored category in business, learning how to ask for forgiveness rather than permission to survive is a really hard lesson.
Well, you're having to lead with that. So, like, for instance, I have to walk in and go and say, nothing in this presentation is about trans or LGBTQ rights. And then you sort of begin. Because it doesn't matter. There's this weird but let's just be even more narrow and say for women proposing a product, a cannabis ovule that goes up their hoo-hoo, okay? You'd think that women would be the de facto experts, like hands down, that no one would question a woman who invented that product, tested it on herself, every female friend she could find, and like even sold it in state. But when she goes for finance, what they'll be looking for is a male doctor to validate it. And they would prefer that he runs the company from that point forward.
Only if he keisters the suppositories.
But this is the problem is that, but they'll want to sell it to women. And I've noticed this over and over again. Cannabis companies saying this product's for women. Well, was it invented by a woman? No, but that shouldn't matter. Stop. You shouldn't be angry at the question. Women are consumers too. So if I want to be a bow hunter, I'm allowed to express consumer opinion about bow hunting equipment, bass fishing equipment. I can have a favorite lure company. Did you know I'll never get shit for liking Rapala? No one will ever dox me for using the wrong triple hook. But if I am a female entrepreneur, my problem is people will go, but a man won't use that. Oh, I know, it's not for men. It's a woman-related product.
Mm-hmm.
That immediately makes it somehow not a market. But bow hunting equipment is a market, I would like to point out. There's an infinite number of male segmentable sub-micro niches that are infinitely defensible by micro-marketing. You can be as redneck as, like, look at United Ultimate Fighting. Tell me that's not hyper-segmented to specific demographics using cues and code words shamelessly because it's capitalism. Okay, so isn't it capitalism for women wanting to sell products to other women? Yeah, that's capitalism. And women choosing to buy products from other women just on the assumption that women might know more about other women. How's that wrong?
Yeah.
It's weird.
It is weird.
That's really the problem. So part of one of my revelations yesterday, I met with a leader at a local tech association. They've been hurling startups at finance for 20 years. And they've never figured out what the math was that successfully got you through that magic, weird gate somewhere mystically up in the clouds. And then you pop out the other side, a publicly traded company, and everyone's drinking champagne. And they're seeing it as a numbers game, or, if you throw yourself at the door enough times. And what I tried to explain to them is that the first problem is have you ever seen a woman or a person of color slide deck that came across your deck that did not say that it were going to be profitable sometime year 3 to 5? And he goes, no, not once. And I said, that's why they fail. Okay. It's because they're starting their deck with an impossible assumption once you gain a little altitude. And the problem is they don't want to say that because that would seem dumb. To reject profitability, oh, that would call into a lie this entire in-orbit capitalist structure that we've constructed. You would question it. So here's the real problem, is that private capital invests because they know they can get out of the deal. That's called the exit. Now, founders are heckled. You shouldn't focus about the exit. You should be focused on your startup. You should only be interested in growing your company. That's all I want to hear you talk about. And tell me when my exit is. What? I want you to be totally committed, but so what are your thoughts on, like, are we going to sell to someone else? Who might acquire us? I'm just asking, but don't focus on it. Don't obsess about it. And the other one is, what's your valuation? I think it's X. What? You're trying to steal from me. You're a liar. That inflation's unrealistic. You look at it's always valuations are unrealistic. Have you ever heard a pundit, ever, any of them in the cannabis space? Yes, that's a reasonably priced stock. Ever? No, it's literally so easy to say the valuation's crazy. No shit, because you're throwing a dart at a thing. There's literally no math involved. It's one group saying we think we're worth this, and another group deciding if that's okay. End of science. And that is where the handshaky stuff happens. Okay? Everyone's agreeing this is the story we're proceeding with.
This episode is brought to you by Fat Nugs Magazine, a global perspective of cannabis and stoner culture as a bridge to the rest of the world. Right now, you can join Fat Nugs Magazine, Beard Bros Farms, Freedom Grow, and Jailed for Weed in the upcoming Prisoners Edition and help spotlight current and past cannabis prisoners and their stories, because no one should be in jail for a plant. Find Fat Nugs Magazine's beautiful print copies at your local dispensary, fatnugsmag.com, and on socials. Cannabis culture welcomes us all. And there's no real math or science around it.
Oh, there's there in case anybody asks. See the document attached.
Yeah.
That's very different. So we talked about it, that people of color and women are put in the awkward position of not speaking the truth, but not lying.
That's a hard place to be.
You're walking the razor's edge, and men don't have to do that. Well, not quite. By the time they've gotten to access that room, they've been trained so that they don't leak bozo bits, which are the things that turn off investors. So that's talking about your family, that you're married, attached, otherwise. You should be a black hole of information. You should exude nothing but dominance and control. You should be confident, but not arrogant. I could do a Barbie speech on the whole thing, but it's an impossible thing to really nail unless you're a true psychopath or sociopath. You shouldn't be able to compartmentalize your life so selectively, so carefully, with that level of focus, unless you're broken in the skull.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. The other year I had a meeting, and it was around some work. And I just remember talking to them and being very open and just discussing things. And I just saw the look on their face. And I stopped. Yeah. And I looked at him and I said, and please.
You killed it.
Yeah. Don't mistake my kindness for weakness. But then all of a sudden, I was a little scary.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, they saw a little bit of the hard edge.
Now
and
you got to overcompensate and show that you're mean. And that's the double-edged sword that women are put in, whereas men, it's sort of like, please, Jesus, be empathetic, and it's, again, because if you're coming from this position of psychopathy, any human emotion is seen as benevolence, right? And that's a very safe place for a leader to take. It's not healthy. It's toxic and it's very myopic. This is kind of my hope for DEI long term, once people get over the allergy to the acronym, is that especially white hetero cis men will understand they've been sold a lie for a lot longer than they've been alive, that they've been handed a role none of them like wearing, none of them feel good about truly doing. That's why they're so eager to go, but I'm a nice guy. On a scale, a gradient of possibles, I'm one of the least horrifying. That should count for something, right? And that's part of the problem. Is for women, there's never a good enough standard. For dudes, it's I'm not as bad as I could be, threat.
Mm-hmm.
And as a male leader, that's the implied threat. So men can lose their shit, clear their desk, break shit, and everyone goes about their day. That's Dave.
He's
Or
not the
that's
emotional
CEO,
one.
right? But
Yeah.
they'll never say that word. They'll never tag him with that word. But women will be tagged that. People of color will be tagged emotional. And so even for males of color, it's used to denigrate them. Oh, well, you're being emotional, right? So they're literally being slammed down for normal human feelings, right? So that's kind of my hope for DEI, is that it will actually unchain an entire generation of males, Gen Z preferably, Alpha after that, to be individuals first, decide what's good for them and their feelings, establish their boundaries about who they want to be ethically, and be able to resist the peer pressure. And then they get to make choices in life while they cope with their body, while they learn how to manage this powerful chemical coursing through their body. We don't teach young boys that puberty will also change your mind. It will cause you to think and feel certain ways. You will react in violent outbursts of rage, and that's the drug. And it's from a long, long time ago where you didn't have time to think when you were attacked by a wild predator. You had to react, right? But it's really harmful now in modern society. So we don't teach boys how to manage those new feelings, those big feelings that grow into impossibly larger bodies, stronger bodies. And then we punish them when they make mistakes, or they never learned how to control them in the first place. So we're then punishing them for existing, for being exactly who society wanted them to be. Male executives, you were punished for loving your wife. Oh, you never said that out loud. No, you should be a cheater. Then you get gold stars for being a studly, controlling, no one tells me what to do, no ball and chain for me. No sense of responsibility. That was shamed. And so work-life balance seemed like an alien term when men heard it. There was no balance. You were sold to a corporation barely out of teens and worked till you died at 65. And men accepted that that's the way it is. The boomers told us so. And my generation was complicit in that. We felt all the same feelings in the 80s. We were an empathic generation in the 80s. And then HIV and the economy changed everything. It destroyed the entire rainbow community for a generation. It wiped out 30 years of history so that our reemergence is seen as an attack, an invasion, when it's just the ecology restoring after a fire. That's all. Trans people have always been here, but when there's laws against you or no medical support, how can we exist? So of course we're new. I knew at 3 I wasn't a boy, but there was no language for me to talk about it. I was not in a home where I could have talked about it. We were Catholic, 60s Catholic. So I knew what being gay was. In my household, I also knew what being Black was. So I was told Black was because Cain slew Abel and Cain was sent off to mate with apes. I learned that in my own house as a child. Okay, so when you're drip fed like that's one of a billion lies. There's a billion lies in this head that I was drip fed from birth, never questioning. You will have a wife and child one day. Just drip fed it. It's an entitlement. And then you wonder why someone's angry in midlife when that isn't a right. Okay, it never was a right. At best, it's a privilege, even in nature, bitch. And so this is kind of the dilemma is I don't think we give each other the room to be individuals. We're so worried about belonging to a group. And that group is a sense of security. I feel it. Honest to God, as a rainbow, I feel safe at Pride. I don't feel safe the rest of the year. I feel safe in a gay business. Why? Because I know at least I have one less person hating me, right? I've been not sold to your kind before. I'd seen that in movies growing up. Okay. I knew it happened to other people. And I had white person empathy. Right? But a year ago, I went in to have barrels powder coated, steel barrels, powder coated. Nothing controversial, nothing remotely gay about it at all. And the first group looked at me up, down, and said, "We can't help you. Go down the street to this other people. We'd hate to deprive them of your business."
What the hell is that?
Right? So then I go down to the second place and they're shocked I'm walking in the door. You can hear, like, it's literally like walking into an old time saloon. And the owner reluctantly helped me. They reluctantly did the work for me, but might as well have been pinching their nose while they did it. And so I have a tiny wee soupçon taste of what Green Book living might have been like in the United States, right, in the 50s and 60s. Just a taste, a whiff, a faint back odor, not the full on soul crushing weight of it all, but I'm feeling the true empathy from experience as opposed to an intellectual type, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is much easier to claim. And so the weird part was I was an empathetic male leader before that was very accommodating of human beings. Becoming trans, it profoundly affected my necessity as a leader to protect others, to promote that as a function of our organization, not an add-on. We're creating a vacuum into which different people would be attracted. Why? Because we were giving them the space to exist. I assume you're an adult. I assume you have these skill sets that you say you do. Show me. Okay. The how will work around. Neurotypical, neurodivergent, all that is accommodating the individual rather than trying to force something on things. Most of our business constructs are post World War II mumbo jumbo. It was returning veterans who had a lexicon of military combat. That's why everything's a plan, a tactical plan. You got to do a combat. And that's why the language is warfare and it's null sum. You have to lose so I win. That's combat. But this isn't combat. This is commerce. I'm sorry. Whoa, combat's the worst possible construct to put this under. Why? Because bros, it's their jam. They love that shit just to do it. Fighting. Fighting's fun. UFC, literally. But business is about you're borrowing people from their existing lives. And for a set period of time, you're getting them to work on your shit. Your shit. You own it. They don't get the shit. They get a small share of the shit. Maybe you share some stock with them, but it's your shit. And you wag that regularly. It's my company. You'll go on media and talk about my company. You're very clear whose company it is. Every now and again, you'll say the word shareholder. I get it. Cool. Okay. And the more dilute you are, the more you have to say the word. And then eventually you're bowing down to the word. But the reality of it is that you're trying to accomplish a set of business goals over a continuum. You require fuel, and that's either selling shit or in getting in investors. But at some point you got to sell shit, and you got to sell shit for more than it cost you. And that's just physics. That's the physics of the economy, right? It's an undeniable Newtonian fact that you got to sell it for more than it costs. But somewhere this delusion in the internet said, nope, if we wish really hard and we issue enough paper, it'll work out in the end.
Oh, well, we've seen how that turns out.
We have, and cannabis should be the most linear thing for people of color and women to succeed at. Why? Because they had experience growing, selling weed before. So why the invisible wall and the slam? And it comes down to the investment side. Because there's no legal investment, and even in Canada, the banks were like, no. Why? Ooh, cannabis. You fund oil projects, right? Yeah, but that's clean. We weren't given finance. So just trying to get a bank account in Canada is nearly impossible. Even if you have a federal license, they can choose to not give you a bank account because it's their right to discriminate against you. They don't have to take your business. And the Canadian banks, there's only five. They all have US assets because they're multinational corporations. And you know what they don't want to risk? Their US assets, right? And so that's why they don't like banking with Canadian businesses. So we have that stigma. And then the banks look at you and go, oh, you're a woman and person of color. Extra scrutiny. Why? Well, just because it's not normal. And so those extra hurdles apply. And then the only source of financing is, hey, have I got a deal for you? Would you like to go public? Because that's the only liquidity event. There's only two ways to exit: be bought out or go public. Those are them, two, only two. There's no other freaking way. I hate to tell you, and no one invests for you to operate your company. So the problem is investors never come out and say, I'm not paying you to operate your company, because that would seem weird. Okay. But they want you as the founder to operate your company as if you were entirely only ever operating your company, while at the same time aiming towards an exit point for them, about them.
Right. So back when things were like really booming and we were all brand spanking new, and granted, we're still very new, but it's a different area of the newness. I'd always have people coming up to me saying, hey, Sarah, what should I invest in? What should I invest in? And I would look at him and I would say, if you're looking to make money quick, you're in the wrong area. This is a long game. Long game. Yeah. And we're still seeing that, because we're seeing investors, calling in their money and destroying companies.
Well, so like I had a weird ride. So when I did it, no one knew what the hell it was. So it was impossible to raise money. And you had to build it, staff it, then apply.
Yeah.
And I spent 3 years trying to explain to people you had to do that. And all the bros were going, but that's illogical. How do you know that? Like, why would you even do that if you don't even know? Short circuit. But it's the government. And they told me, I can't inspect your intentions. And as a woman, I went, oh, that makes sense. So I had to actually build my whole thing. So my first one was small. I spent $35,000 to get my first license, 005. That shocked everybody. Why? Because it was millions of dollars you need to spend. I had a CEO brag to me he had spent $10 million to date and hadn't gotten a license yet. And when he asked me how much it cost to get my license, and I told him, he literally got up from the table and walked away. It wasn't sexy. I ruined his story. He had been telling people how much money it cost, and I got it for 35 grand. There's something wrong with you, lady. And it was, you don't have big dreams. And I'm like, I have practical dreams that I want to screw up quietly, small. I wanted to do things like we had the knock box was the only pre-roll machine available to us at the time.
I remember those.
I wanted to get one and start making joints we weren't allowed to make pre-rolls at this point. And I figured, fuck it, we can use oregano like high school. It's fun, but we should learn how to do it. And then I ran into, but we're not allowed to. And I'm like, but it's oregano. Okay. Health Canada will not be upset if we practice with oregano. We should get the skill set. And so I discovered this weird dichotomy. Pushing and breaking the law, absolutely. Trying something within the framework, oh, dangerous. Okay. And it came down to, because it hadn't been written down somewhere externally for them to read, they didn't believe it. But those same people are the folks investing in the hemp beverage on the basis that because it wasn't written down, it's legal. And it's strictly because they invest in what they want to. Those people that walked up to you and said, what should I invest in? That was at 0% interest, I'll remind you. Everyone that had any liquid capital, it was stagnant sitting in the bank. The bank gave you zero diddly squat and charged you fees for nothing, right? So everyone was an investor up until COVID. Okay, so everyone looked and said, oh, I want to buy some penny stock. Why? Because that shit goes up. You don't buy blue chip. Why? You get 10 shares. And then it might go up $1 one day. Woohoo. Mm-hmm. People wanted to see the excitement. So my first company, we did $5 million financing, and then we did a little TSXV job. And then they did a later financing, I think, for around 35 million. The problem was the stock came out at 50 cents and fell to 13 cents for 2 years. 2 years. I had people calling me, 50 cents. Asshole. And then the market lifted like a rocket. That stock broke $11 at one point.
So what did they do then?
Did I hear any of those people bitching and moaning, offering to give their stock back because they were wrong? No. So I met people that made millions. I figured at one point we had created 30 or 40 millionaires in that first company off the back end, not inside the company. Oh, no. And that's what I think most founders don't understand is your likelihood of getting financed is proportionate to the amount of money you'll make other people doing the transaction. Okay, there's an ecosystem of percentages between you and there.
Yeah.
It only activates if a certain dollar volume gets inserted into the coin slot. That wakes up the machine of interest. Most women and people of color's business plans do not have the elements in them needed. That's the problem. Why? In fact, your slide deck or business plan's loaded with allergy code that when you insert it into the capital machine, it's going to puke it out and blame you for being stupid and not knowing how the system works. When in fact, it's planned that way, designed that way to keep the number small going in, that it's a select group of people getting through, and that it generates a shitstorm of transactions on the back end.
Okay, so let me ask you this, Renee. And this is part of what we're talking about, but I might be going off on a little tangent of my own. When I look at the industry and I see, like, especially like when we were first starting out and we were still like in the gray area of medicinal use, and there were a lot more of female and BIPOC led companies back then with really thoughtful products that people loved.
Excellent. Yeah.
Great quality. And as we started to get into legalization, a lot of these just dried up and disappeared. And so here we are, either stuck with brands that have subpar products, or they've picked up these other wonderful products. I love your special sauce. I'm not going to change anything. And then they destroy it.
Yep.
because we see that in all industries. It's like, oh, nothing will change. 2 years in, everyone gets laid off and everything shut down.
Yep.
And then we have these same people who are now saying, you know, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. All, you know, everyone's losing their jobs. We're not selling as much as we should. But on the other, out of the other corner of their mouth, they're like, cannabis sells itself. But they're only, their main consumer that they're talking to is, you know, the dude in the tracksuit with the snapback hat. And you're just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, but no, that's actually, so that's strategic. And it's unfortunately part of what I was just discussing, is that the reason those brands are having those conversations is that it's actually signaling finance.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's always about finance. Okay. Sales are about finance. Marketing's about finance. Brand is about finance. Why? Because as a CEO, you basically have to keep the company always funded.
Right.
And that unfortunately puts basically, imagine you're wearing an explosives vest with a timer on it that's constantly going to zero. And all you can ever do is slap the stop button and it resets it. And then you start over. That's funding. And they never tell you that it's this perpetual rat treadmill that you as the founder have to get in your skull. Boys know this from their experience in high finance. And so that's why the CEOs usually solely focus on the financing, and they're the finger guns and they're going to Wall Street and they're doing the broker and all that stuff. Why? Because that is actually how you get funded. The doing of the business, the company, that's the plausible explanation used for the financing. Okay, the financing is how people make their money.
Yeah.
The company isn't, unless you're issuing dividends. These people make their money selling that stock to other people. So a broker that gets a private deal, so an angel, let's say an angel puts together a deal in California. That might be two dudes writing $1 million each. Okay. In Canada, $2 million requires you to syndicate it among 10 angels writing $200,000 checks. So your workload is infinite. They're scattered all over. You've probably done 40 pitches, 2 to each of them to convince them. And so the cost of getting that angel money is staggering. The runway, 3 to 6 months, trying to put together $2 million as opposed to two dudes in a coffee shop in Frisco. You know, there's just, capital is where it aggregates and pools, and its private capital is largely in rich guys' pants pockets, and it's their hobbies. And so when you've got a female entrepreneur coming along slinging a female brand, that is not going to say anything to the self-esteem oriented part of that dude who has the cash. But if you come pitching at them a street lifestyle brand that makes them cool to the bros at the gym, or activates a part of their brain that remembers the 80s and the golden era of hip hop that they remember from high school, that gets you the deal.
See, and that's nuts. That's nuts, Renee, because you'd think, like, you know, when you're breaking it down, well, if you're like, you know, you'd think that what they'd want is something that is able to cover a larger market, and it wouldn't be so much. And I get it. Like, I've read Primal Branding, where it's like, you know, I want to be that, I am that, you know, that's, you know, there's another thing.
It's that way at finance though. And that's kind of, you look at Elon. Okay. Elon is a contradiction. When they were raising money for Tesla, it was hard as hell. Why? Because it was eco and green, and the bros were anti-green.
Right.
Right. He got sexy with Starlink throwing out cash like nuts, and then the spaceships.
I hate those trucks, by the way, just so you know.
They're
horrendous.
No, but they became the most valuable automaker on earth, beating Ford and Chevy, who have actual buildings and assets and history. So that pissed off the automakers in general too. But why was that stock so expensive? Because bros started liking it. Bros bought the stock. It created demand for more Elon stock. And if they all hold 10 shares and will never sell them because they love the guy, that's lock-in, right? So he's not punished at the stock market because his fan base holds the stock. Whereas if you're a female or minority founder, you have no fan base, honey. I'm sorry, they're not stock buyers. I dare you find a broker that knows who any of your friends are.
Yeah.
And that's the real problem, because where do you think your private deal goes for its $2 to $5 million A round? Well, it has to go to a fund or a brokerage. And it's a fund if you're going to get venture capital, which that's its own nightmare. Or it's a brokerage if they're going to slap you in a shell and walk you out the door as a public company. Or maybe you do the long walk and do the full IPO from scratch. It just depends on your appetite and how much time you have on the calendar. Because a full IPO takes a year and a few months, and you have to be able to just focus on doing IPO for a year as CEO, nothing else. No sales, no human resources, no family. It's just IPO. And again, you don't know that's part of your job as a founder. And they kind of know that.
Yeah.
That's why you get swapped out after financing. And that's usually what happens to most female founders, people of color, is you're good enough to invent it. You're good enough to come up with it, but we don't think you can run it once we put money in it.
Are you looking for a lasting, meaningful way to connect with your audience and highlight your brand? Well, listen up, because Planted with Sarah Payan is taking on new sponsors. Here's a powerful stat. 20% of listeners are more likely to support brands they hear about on a trusted podcast. And 60% actually look up that product after hearing about it. That's the power of podcasting. Planted with Sarah Payan has a unique draw. With remarkable guests, we attract and engage audience that spans all sides of the cannabis spectrum. Picture your message reaching these listeners time and again. Podcast ads are evergreen, meaning your brand stays relevant as new audiences discover and binge past episodes. It's a long-term investment that keeps on giving. If you're looking for a targeted, passionate audience with lasting impact, the right listeners are here waiting to meet your brand. Visit plantedwithsarah.com to get a copy of our sponsorship deck today.
That's exhausting.
That's kind of part of the process, though, is if you grind them down at that point, they never ask questions, right?
Right.
And so I relentlessly made it through. And that's when I discovered the filter. And so if your deck talks about profit, you'll be shot. So don't talk about profit. You can mention that your goal is to hopefully achieve some kind of profitability at some point, but you'll notice that my language shifted.
Yeah.
That's code switching.
You got very
And
vague
so,
there.
again, that's that. Why do you think I have that risks right as the first page, and then we never ever mention risks again? I've done my job. It was there. But that's the difference between a male deck and a female deck. See, the male deck I can get away with on the front page mentioning risks, and it's your fault for never looking at them. But a female deck, every slide will be de-risked as you go by the people in the audience. How do you know that? Has that been verified? Is anyone else doing this? And if anyone else is doing it, oh my God, why won't they beat you?
Right.
So you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you're the only one doing it, how do you know it'll be good? And if you're not the only one doing it, these other people, obviously male, how do you know that they won't use their Ivy League contacts and their Wall Street buddies to crush you inevitably? Well, I don't know that. No one could ever know that. What would be the point of being an entrepreneur if that's why you approach things? Because inevitably, Microsoft can't always do what you do. Google can choose to do what you do. Bill Gates can just come out of retirement and pick you to annoy for the rest of your life, but not likely.
Right.
Okay. But women and minorities are forced to always play these imaginary war games against yet to happen scenarios. Whereas a dude, it's like, oh, you've done this? Cool, good for you. Oh, you're out there kicking ass, taking names. Good for you. How do we inject more rocket fuel so you can do more ass kicking, taking names? Okay, different conversation.
Yeah.
Different energy. How do we get more of this? But what happens if a competitor enters the market mysteriously from an alien dimension and they suddenly have like infinite supplies? What do you do then? I've been on both sides of the fence. I know I didn't get asked shit like that before. I know it's the basis of everything now. I got into wildfire protection. Why? Because they're happening every year and there's no solutions. Have you noticed shit keeps burning down?
Oh,
And
yeah. I'm in
everyone's standing.
California. I
Oh, yeah.
totally, yeah.
I was thinking of you people when I built this thing because all my friends are living up in the hills and they're in the middle of a drought and shit's burning down and everyone's saying, help. And the tech community is standing back going, ooh, we should have satellites do something. What the hell does that have to do with cheese? Nothing. And so I currently reside in a forest. And so my self-interest is, we're going to burn. And so I took my poor self and thought, okay, let's assume there's no electricity because fire burned down wires. California taught me that. And I'm not a firefighter. Never once have I fought a fire ever. I do campfires and they kind of mildly scare me. So I'm not staying to fight a forest fire. I can't win against fire. It's physically impossible. It's fire. And because of that, I want to push a button and run away where I'm safe. And then hopefully come home to my house and it's there. Yay. Insurance didn't have to buy me a new house. I didn't have to find a new place to live in a housing crisis, right? And the insurance company didn't have to build me a brand new house, which was never in their premiums. Never did they plan to buy me a new house. And so I designed this and people go, how do you know it'll work? And I'm like, it's fire retardant.
Yeah.
It's literally the same stuff they drop from an airplane. And you don't say, how do you know that works? It's because they fly it up in an airplane, they drop it on a fire and the fire goes out and you go, yeah. So it's the same principle, except we're spraying it on your house the same way as when you call them and they come out and they spray it. So the only difference is we don't have 4 dudes spraying it all over your house. It's already there waiting to spray it on your house when you want it to. Because we thought that would be better than calling a phone number and asking during a fire, because probably a lot of other people are kind of, wanting it too. That would be a bad time to have to book a fire guy crew to come out and help, I think. In California with its population, that's a huge crew waiting for a fire to do nothing, right? So this again was my brain, my market. But you think anybody wants to talk about fire? No. Cannabis is easy. Cannabis is sexy. Everyone wants to talk cannabis till you get to business, till you get to fixing stuff, till you get to equity and diversity. Then cannabis becomes hard to talk about. We won't talk about it anymore.
Or it's not fun. Where's the fun in that?
Well, see, that's kind of why people don't want to talk about it. And that to me is to be a community. When someone says I'm on fire, it's our job to put them out and get them first aid, to call an ambulance, to check in on them when they've gone to the hospital, see how they're doing maybe. What we don't say is, why are you on fire? Okay, we don't then blame them for being on fire, regardless of how they got on fire. It might have been they were smoking gasoline in their backyard. I don't know. But that's not the point. You have a human being on fire. And that to me, as people of color, women, LGBTQ, these are people on fire in society. So they're saying, I need help. And so if it's people of color starting a business in cannabis or any other industry, part of that fire is society has set them on fire. You're black. You're black male. You're scary. There's all sorts of stuff. And so we in society should not be asking them why they're on fire. Okay, someone set them on fire. It's not their fault. It's our job to now put them out and to get first aid. That's the real point. And so in cannabis, equity is not about, well, they're getting something that I should have. It's not fair. That's not about it at all. The fact is, you being the white guy playing is unfair. Okay, that's the unfair part. So let's just acknowledge the cat in the room. You were voting against it up until you were for it.
Right.
Or you were ambivalent about it, which was worse. You didn't have an opinion until you were financially contributed. Whereas other people were doing the emotional labor for decades. And that's really the crux of it. The people that had been doing the advocacy, the promotion, the old editors of High Times, all the magazines, that's love. That's enthusiasm, right? That's community. It's very rarely good business sense starting a magazine, but by God, that's a sign of passion, right? And you can always tell the health of an industry with a pervasive number of magazines. Why? Because internet's fine, but I like holding that magazine in my hand. I like looking at them pictures of the buds. I like just reading over the juicy terpene profile. You know, it's all written, it's all bullshit, but sometimes it's poetry. It makes you feel good. You believe again, you know, and that's part of what cannabis is letting consumers down. We sell dreams, not products. We sell experiences, not brands. Deliberately starting out to create a brand, or that to me is just that's so whorehouse in the desert. You're just putting a neon sign up with vagina. Okay, that's the lowest level of consumer awareness. This is where we're at the point where everyone's a department store. Stop it. You can't be everything to everyone. Segment, choose a lane that looks like you, for Christ's sakes, and start there. So retail, I think it starts there, because retail is the only point at which a consumer actually touches brand. And that's a problem if you're a farmer. If you're a farmer, you're depending on that damn bud tender to tell a sad story or a caring story or you got to be a pitch person for that one brand. Well, they got 300 brands or 500 or 1,000 brands trying to talk through that one poor bud tender.
Well, and then when you look at that too, I mean, it's not like how it was back in the day where when you went into a dispensary, the people who were working there had direct connections with a lot of the brands and the products.
There were 10 growers and jars of bud, and they put them in a bag in front of you at some places, right?
Right. And you weren't working from a space of working for a large company that doesn't want to invest in your education and is all about formula retail. And they're like, we've got this. It'll sell itself. It'll sell itself, but we've got this extra stuff in inventory today, so we want you to push this.
Yeah.
And then how are you creating good relationships with your consumers where they actually trust you and come back? I mean, that was something that I dealt with working in a dispensary was, I mean, I had somebody come in one day and they're like, you know, I could get my cannabis somewhere else, but you educate me, you treat me with respect and, you know, compassion. And that's a huge thing. When we got into, I used to do classes, and one of the biggest conversations that we would have, and I loved my job, but talking to management was, well, we don't understand the value. We don't see the ROI, Sarah. So we ended up doing, I said, we'll tell you what, I worked with a buyer and we went to them and said, we're going to put a banner on the website with the pics from class that are discussed. Yeah. We'll track the sales.
Yeah.
And the sales were through the roof, much more so than in the stores. But they still never understood it. And we still don't see those kind of connections unless you're like in a small community with small stores. And then people have their connections and their favorites. And then these big stores are like, well, you know, why isn't this working out? I mean, We just had like this big celebrity brand come in and we had a DJ, but nobody's showing up.
Yeah, no, that's so again, so everyone has had this. So CPG crawled out of the woodworks and infected the dialogue. So consumer packaged goods. Well, that isn't cannabis. Cannabis is its own category. Cannabis consumer packaged goods. It's
Right.
its own reality. And if you think of it as a consumer packaged good, I can understand why your delusional weirdness has crept into your business plan. It's not toilet paper. It's not Pepsi. It's
Right.
not water. Why? There's a regulatory framework around it where you go to jail, for one. So no one who stole a roll of toilet paper at the Charmin plant ever went to jail. Okay? But we can lose our license if we allow someone to steal anything from our license. That's a different concept. The fact we had to keep our cannabis in a bank vault in Canada for the first 5 years, that's an added expense that your average drugstore doesn't have to face when putting their rectal cream. It doesn't have to be kept in a vault, signed out by licensed, security cleared, in case one tube of preparation H winds up in a middle school somewhere. So it's a completely different argument. And the problem is when the guys largely migrated from CPG, I sold beer, I sold cigarette, I can sell cannabis. Bullshit. Cannabis has never been sold like that, you lying sacks of shit. That would be brand new trying that. I'm sorry. You're trying an experiment. And it might work. Why? Because P.T. Barnum said there's a sucker born every minute. So your branding idea may, in fact, sell that batch of shit once. Cool. Yep. But will they come back? And here's the thing about cannabis smokers. They're promiscuous. You're always looking for something better.
And exciting.
Why? Because, yeah, now, unless you're a medical patient that's trying to dial in specifically something, no, you grew up wanting this, that, and the other thing from High Times, and you could never get it. Why? Because it was, this is what's in the baggie. That's how you bought weed up until 10 years ago. This stuff, what's it called? This. That was it. Maybe you knew the grower. You certainly didn't know what was in it. Better that we don't know. So this is a different world. And the problem is the relationship is with the bud tender and the store closest to where the person lives. That's called reality. That's also where all their other retail relationships exist, in their neighborhood. That's how humans function. We're like that. And so when I walk into my dispensary, even though I'm in the industry, I look for the bud tender I recognize, the one that I've had a prior relationship to. My favorite bud tender goes, "Ooh, I have something for you. Yeah. This just came in." And you know what? 100% of the time I buy that shit. Why? He was so excited about it. That's all. You've just made me excited by you being so, you're a jaded, boring professional and that shit floated your boat. So must be rocket fuel. And that was selling without selling.
Yes.
Not once was that selling, but engendered in me was this urge to experience this joy he was describing, experience this, squeeze the nugget. Ooh, yes, it is a firm nugget. You know, that's part of the relationship. And then when I go away, even if it's meh, I won't act meh. I won't feel meh. I will go meh, but I won't go back and go, Right. If I buy shoes, I will go back and go, but not cannabis, not once. Again, I get people going to the vape cartridge. That's technology failing. I totally get it. But you buy an ounce, you smoke half of it, you go, halfway through the ounce now. You'll go buy something else.
Right.
Why? Right. That's the way it works. So I think that the reality is if you're a farmer, grow as few products as humanly possible. At best, make pre-rolls. Sure, sure, that's easy. Those are actually related concepts. Flour, ground up flour in a tube. Easy to connect the brand quality connection between what's in the pre-roll and the big bag of flour. Maybe they'll buy a pre-roll and then they'll buy your big bag of flour. That's a connection. Where you lose the connection is when you make shatter. Why? Because not everybody that smokes joints does shatter.
Mm-hmm.
If you do shatter, you got to have equipment. Okay, that's a different subcategory, a collector of equipment. That's an age range. You ain't going to talk some 60-year-old lady into buying dab rigs. And them huffing down like they're freebasing cocaine is not going to float it with the PTA, right? That's going to make a lot of moms uncomfortable. So this is kind of why, if you're a farm, stay closer to your weed if you're trying to promote your quality, because the farther you step away from flour, the less transferable to people's brain that is. I don't see vape cartridges as connected to a farm. And that's really been the hard part. A cannabis beverage, it's really hard to connect it to a farm. We don't connect farms to beer. We don't think, Bob's farm in Saskatchewan sure bros good rye. Beer's a commodity, and a cannabis beverage is a commodity beverage. You can't pitch quality. Sorry, you're just barking up the weirdest tree with that one.
Right.
So I think we've done it to ourselves with products. If I'm a manufacturer of goods and I make edibles, I am trapped into a brand relationship because the customer can't try it beforehand, likely doesn't have experience with the format, type, or experience, can't extrapolate. It is pig in a poke. And then that's why Wana kicked ass. Why? Because they were fast acting and they tasted good. Wow, two things that I look for as a user. Why? When I drink a beer, it's not Russian roulette if I'll feel it or not. It's not like, oh, that one didn't work, I'll try another one.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol's linear. Wana solved that by making cannabis edibles linear now. I know how to gauge them. I'm not going to screw myself over. That's where they won. And the tasting good, it's a candy now that gets you high. There's no relationship with cannabis in that product at all. None. And that's going the other direction. They've now made a good product that happens to contain a cannabinoid. Right. But it's not selling cannabis culture in any way, shape, or form, right? They're selling the effect. They're selling the experience. That's why they have clean marketing. And I don't see that in other spots. In cannabis stores, I'm a department store. Oh, ask the Hudson's Bay, Eaton's, and Simpsons Sears how that all worked out for them in the long run. You can't make everyone happy. Just the inventory that you have to keep in the back, not turning over.
That's real estate.
Yeah, we've been there. And these gigantic dispensaries where you've got a 6-foot counter making all your rent. I don't get it. Be McDonald's, bitch. Dollars per square foot. If it ain't selling something, it's fucking dead real estate. Get rid of it. Put something in it. A vending machine selling sandwiches at least is paying part of the rent. And this is kind of I think that the smaller independent retailers, women, minority owned, I think their business models will survive. They'll be the bodegas of cannabis. They'll know their community. They'll have what's currently trending. They won't have a massive backstock because you can't afford to take the float.
Right.
When I had my cigar shop, we operated $1 million a year in sales, and this is in the 90s, early 90s, and that's mail order. And then we had our store. We had to get a store because people didn't trust online commerce at that point in time. They didn't believe that we existed. We had to create a retail store so that our e-commerce business had legitimacy. And it created a weird feedback loop. People planned their holidays to come to Victoria so that they could come into our cigar shop and smoke a cigar with us.
Yeah.
That's relationship. We had a brand in the cigar industry at the time, and we were a made-up name. We were on the Malahat, which is a mountain. And one of my partners thought we should make this Spanish sounding, so it was Casa de Malahato, We added an O on the end. It's not even grammatically correct Spanish. And I designed up a cigar label, and it was absolute kitsch. Guys loved it. We created our store. It was oak paneling and leather armchairs and the claw ashtrays, and it created a Victorian gentleman's club atmosphere. Why? It made selling $100 cigar easier.
You have to have your storytelling.
But this is what you're doing with the cannabis. And that's what I think, like, people say they're storytellers online. Bullshit. I call you on that. Do it in real life in concrete. Do that in the store. When that customer walks through that little dingle at the door, that is opportunity knocking, and they're bringing you cash. They're walking in your store with pockets full of money, and they're happy. They love you. They're coming in to give it to you. All you have to say is, "What's your budget today?" "Oh, well, thank you for asking. I would like to give you $100. "Well, let me help you. Give me that $100. And then the journey begins. And that's what it's about in that moment, tied to that consumer. Even if it's a sad story, even if they're going through something painful like cancer, it doesn't have to be a sad transaction. You can show them about the hope ahead, and show them the options. And that's the soft selling of cannabis that I don't think we're there yet. I used to have to sell shoes. I handled little old lady feet on sale days. I know how to hump shoes. I had to sell neckties at a specialty necktie store in a mall where all they sold were ties. What a dumb idea from the 80s. But this is the thing, that I've sold jewelry. When I got into cigars, that's when I discovered the magic. These people were walking into my store, buying their product, setting it on fire, and thanking me for the privilege of burning it. And I sat back and I thought, how can I fuck this up? Well, it would be judging them, yucking their yum. And that was the other thing that most cannabis folk, when you come out saying that your brand is the biggest, best, and everything, you're actually telling the customer they're an idiot for all their decisions made prior. You shouldn't insult your customer base. You do it enough times, people won't buy you because you're that asshole that talked down to them in the commercial that time. If you truly want to reach the most people, you're trying to tell the best story you can. You're trying to relate this product to people's lives. And so it's not narrow casting in a certain sense. You're identifying that one core value that's common. And you're communicating that with your whole being. That's what bonds people together. That's why people will still use that brand. That's why Barbie had the resurgence. Why? Because lurking in the hearts of so many girls was, you can do better, damn it. And finally, the brand addressed the elephants in the room, and women could have a conversation about their lifelong relationship with this sometimes toxic brand. And that's genuine relationship. And most cannabis companies, I think, lack the authenticity of their brand. It's not genuine. They don't feel anything. And that's hard for a customer to connect to. You can promote the shit out of it. They'll buy it once.
Right. Because you have to have that feeling.
Yeah, I want a brand that people, when they've come into my store, I want them to leave feeling fulfilled. Okay, that their shopping list in their head was all ticked off, not just a grudge shopping list, but that they left feeling slightly better than they came in somehow. Somehow in the alchemy of the retail transaction, retail therapy occurred. For a moment, they were seen. For a moment, they were heard. And how do I know that they were seen and heard? I gave them what they wanted. I identified their need and met it. That's powerful, being seen and heard. So if you're a person of color and you're shopping and you buy from another person of color, there's a need to connect. There's an instant shared bonding that goes on. You can drop the code. You can drop the performances. You can now relate. And that's...
When we're looking at that, And we're looking at representation and being seen and heard. And I totally get you, because like I was behind a bar and a dispensary for many years, also doing the education for the company. And a guy came up to me and said, "Sarah, you've been here a really long time." I was like, "Yeah, you must have seen some shit." "Yes." "What have you seen?" And he leans in and I'm like, "What I've seen." And it's exactly what you were saying. Everybody wants to be seen. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be loved. And he was really bummed out. But when we are looking at this in like a grand scale, looking at cannabis and looking at representation, what are some of the takeaways that you think for people listening who are either looking for representation in the places that they go, or our colleagues that are looking to represent and create beautiful things and succeed in our industry? What are some of the biggest takeaways that you've gotten that you'd like to share with them?
One, I think consumers have to demand representation. I'm not going to give you my money. This is not a hostage taking scenario where I have to take what's given to me. Excuse me. I'm the customer. I can shop with my feet, first thing. So if you don't look like the customers you're trying to sell to, you're exploiting. I call that neo-colonialism capitalism. And so if you parachute into a community and you open up a store because it's a vacuum of cash, yeah, I suggest those consumers shop elsewhere. And that's because representation does matter. It's not only economics, and it should recirculate. Those employees working in the community stay in the community, live in the community, spend their dollars in the community. It's also important that people can see representation in the job market. You might not know that you want to be a bud tender or a store manager or an executive. And it starts at retail. Those are the first representations of a corporation. You walk into a Walgreens, you'll never meet the CEO of Walgreens. The entire reputation of Walgreens rests on whichever store you've happened to be in. They're the representative, and that cashier is actually all you know about the entire Walgreens public corporation and how they treated you that day. It's the same at the dispensary. You don't know who these brands are. You don't have a clue who Megacorp, MSO, Acme, Brand Bro Corp is. You know this human being standing behind the counter with the cute nose ring and all the tattoos, and they're the relationship. And so that is what I, as a manager of a store, should be concerned with, that my staff are building continuous relationships, that they're constantly striving to better understand the customer and serve the customer needs. The old phrase, "the customer's always right," is a partly edited phrase. The customer's always right in matters of taste. And what that means is you don't yuck a customer's yum.
Yeah.
If they want a purple check suit, you sell them a purple check suit with gold shirt and emerald cufflinks if you can. You cater to what their self-esteem dictates is good for them. And the problem is, when I hear a lot of cannabis brands talking, it's "I know better. Let me tell you what to think. You don't know what's good. Let me tell you." And that to me is yucking someone else's yum. You're essentially kink shaming their taste buds. And that's kind of, I think, where the younger entrepreneurs, much more sensitive and inclusive, I think really what you're seeing is the boomer hangover, where they're still trying to broadcast to an audience that no longer exists or will soon cease to exist. Nostalgia broadcasting, I call it. That's the rise of the bro brands and the yesterday bad boy gangsta shit. That's for an audience that's having its kick at the Me Too. I get it. But the reality is, when I look forward as a brand and as a business, I'm planning 50 years. Realistically, in retail, it's nothing wrong with planning 50 years. There's lots of retail brands that are 100 years. Think big, for Christ's sakes. You know, why would you stop at 5 years and then who knows? That's so empty-headed. What is your signature statement? What is your retail? What is your perspective? If you don't have one of those, it doesn't matter what cannabis you sell, you'll fail. Why? You're inarticulate. That's why you'll fail. You have nothing. You're just a hodgepodge, empty piece of real estate with shelves that happen to have products on it that people are trying to hopefully sell. That's not retail. Retail that's old, when you go to Europe and you see a store that's been there for 300 years, and you go in and you meet the 10th generation, they're doing the same freaking thing that they did 300 years ago. Why? They didn't break it. Okay. And that's kind of where, start back at flower and pre-rolls. Clean your shit up, people. Clean up your story. Sell honest weed honestly, and then add products and keep the stuff that sells. Don't sell stuff that doesn't. Like, honest to God, that back room is not for skeletons. Okay. That should be its temporary waiting space while it's begging to fly onto the shelf for a customer that's begging for it. We have enough SKUs. Edit. You're not FOMOing anything by having the infinite paralytic menu. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I guess, 2004, 20 years ago, first time I went to Amsterdam, I walked into a coffee shop and I asked them what cannabis they had, and they slid a double-sided Denny's menu across the table. It was laminated. There was stuff on both sides of it, 11 by 17, huge. I'm looking at it and there was hash as a category. They had 10 different types of hash from different countries. This was smuggled stuff, real Thai weed. Oh my God. And so I was paralyzed. So this was 20 years ago. I'm standing in a coffee shop with two other people. We're paralyzed. And so what did we say? What do you recommend?
Right.
And the bud tender said, you guys smoke a lot? And we're all like, no, this is our first time in Amsterdam. And she went, oh God, yeah, okay. So here's the child size hashish for you. And it was too much. We left it there because we got baked off our asses and wandered around Amsterdam, just cooked. And I went home to Canada thinking, choice paralysis in cannabis. Oh, that's dangerous. Oh my God. I never thought of the possibility. It's like a teenage boy. When will I ever, have a girl suddenly being alien transported into a free bordello? It's crude, but that's the cannabis buyer decision now, is that you have someone that's been told they can't have cannabis for most of their life. And now they're walking into a retail store that's bright colored shelves, the packages. Oh my God, the packages are so cool. What do I choose? And the problem is you still have the same cannabis pocket.
Yep.
Right. And so your budget is not hydro or rent or cannabis. It's hydro, rent, food, other stuff, cannabis somewhere in there. Right. And so matter what, each one of those customers walking in the door only has X amount a month every month to give you. That's it. That's all you're playing with. And the most you can do is build enough of a relationship with them that you're the store that they give their cannabis budget to. And that means you're taking them on a monthly journey that's different every month. And that means you have to be promiscuous with your suppliers, not your customers. Your customers are the ones you have to be committed and true to. The suppliers, oh no, you sleep around on them every chance you get. Why? Because it's for the customer. You don't want to restrict the choice your customer has. You don't want a snaky deal with a provider to just sell one. That's not good for you as the retailer. If you're a smart retailer, you don't want no rings on your finger with no supplier. That's for the customer.
Yeah, you want to surprise and delight and be a trusted resource so that people keep coming back. And if there is somebody who does have their standby that they always come back for, you can have, you can do that, but you really, really, really want to make sure that people feel the need and feel hopeful when they come to see you, because
Always.
yeah, it's so emotional. Cannabis is much more emotional than and personal than your average, CPG person wants to admit.
Oh, to me, it's identical to when I sold cigars. So there is no logical reason for smoking a $115 cigar. I assure you, there's no logical, ethical, moral. I mean, literally, you're taking $115 and rolling it up into a tube. You might as well stick it in an incense setter and set it on fire and go, cotton. But you're literally buying a story. And that was the thing. $115 cigar has to have a wicked story. And what's the story? Oh, just the wrapper alone takes 5 years for them to age. It's a special grade of veinless tobacco. They literally have to cut it out. It's growing under shade cloth, so it doesn't even get the veins. Everything is chosen by hand. They have to sort it by color. And in the end, there's only a small pile. And it's so paper thin when they roll it, the slightest friction will break it. Okay, that's just part of the story. But by the time you're done, rich guy's going, yeah, I want a box.
Right.
Why? Because he has a story to go home with. And when his friends come over, he goes, hey, do you want one of these cigars? Well, you can't. Why? Because there's a story. And that's the magic of it. Our cigar cutters, $1,000 for a cigar cutter that lops the tip off the thing you're going to set fire to.
Yeah.
Oh, and you have $1,000 lighter to light the cigar with. That's what I'm hoping for cannabis.
When you're talking about the story, it reminded me, because back in the day, I used to smoke cigars, and
right?
and I think the favorite one that I wanted, and correct me, I might be getting it wrong because it's been a long time. It was Arturo Fuente short stories.
Oh, yes. The short stories were the ones, and the Opus X. That was the crack cocaine of the bros. Have you had an Opus X? And the reason is that so when all the Cubans fled during the revolution, they went to other Caribbean islands and started cigar companies. The problem is Cuba has had 500 years of making cigars in the same place. So the soil is practically tobacco. It has this built-in funk that you can't get. And so they went to the Dominican Republic and they had to burn down jungle and start fresh. And so the tobacco takes time to build up its age, inventory, aging, all this kind of stuff. And so the Fuente family was the first one that doubled down on filler, binder, and wrapper, all from the same farm. And cigar nuts had been conditioned on the Cuban story, so that there was this vacuum waiting for Dominican or Honduran. And the Fuente family, they nailed that like a bullseye. If you want to study what being a cannabis house should look like, study the Fuente family and how they pivoted Dominican cigars. Masterclass. And we got them in and they were sold by the stick. We refused to sell full boxes because that was hoarding to us. Yeah. It was selfish. We sold each cigar at double the wholesale. And we had a lineup out the door. Why? That's beautiful marketing. Yep. It's a story. The pictures, the father, the son in their white shirts, and they're staring at their loving cigar that they both built with their dirty hands. Oh, the story. And that's kind of where the cannabis folks have missed out, is the storytelling that the cigar houses had. Now, the cigarette guys had a slightly different story. It was, hey, want to buy some drugs? And no, we're not selling drugs. No, they're good for you. And so the cigarette guys and their cigarette tobacco advertising, that's a whole different animal. You have to go back to the cigar houses, start in the 1800s and see how they were created. Because it was all manual labor. It's all agricultural product. And they were talking about quality in the 1800s. They were worried about additives, artificial products. We use no flavors. By hand is still the sign of apex in cigars. Cannabis, meanwhile, we got to get the biggest computer to roll our joints. You know, the coolest joints I've ever gotten, they were from the little goat logo tin in California. So is it
Oh,
Stewart Farms?
Lowell Farms.
Lowell Farms, yeah.
Yeah.
And then you opened up the little tin and they were flawless little joints. And the ends were just perfectly folded in like little daisies. And that to me sold me on their brand to my soul. Why? They put such loving care in finishing those joints. That to me was a cigar moment for a brand.
And it's
They
part of
had
the story, right? It's
That's the connection. They cared right down to the second they put it in the tin.
yeah.
Like I still, again, don't remember that company. I don't know if they exist, but they were at the bleeding edge of a consumer product. And that's where I say cannabis consumer packaged good, that's the future, is when makers start wanting to perfect their skill set, become a master craftsman, where, yeah, we got growing pot down. Cool. Now it's about the THC potency. Screw that. Make me a pre-roll that when I smoke it blows my brain. And when I smoke the next one, it's not a dud.
Yep.
Make it not canoe. Okay, there's a handful of little details. The package that doesn't make me want to rip it open with a chainsaw or break my skin or my nails getting into it. If you can get to the point where the story and the product inside the shitty plastic packaging align in my brain, I love your brand. You can sell me another product.
Yeah,
I won't
that's
smoke
it.
that one. I
Yeah.
won't smoke that one again, but I'll trust something else you sell me. Just never disappoint me. And if you ever lie, I'm gone and I'll tell everybody about you.
Right, right. And when you're creating those experiences, figuring out like how people are using it, like we had once upon a time, there was this company that was doing these cannabis infused marshmallows. And we were like,
No.
you know, how are we going to do this? You know, and they had singles and they had these beautiful boxes. And at
Yeah.
the time it was like, you know, pre-legalization. So like $30 for a box of marshmallows in assorted flavors. And they weren't
Amazing.
going. They were amazing. And they were really well done. The woman was a confectioner. And what I used to do is I would talk to people and kind of see, how social is this person? What time of year is it? Is it a gift giving season? What is
Summer,
it?
it's s'mores.
Yeah. And s'mores. Yeah. And then you could just use some infused chocolate. But,
Yeah.
you know, you identify what the person's wanting. And I used to be like, okay, if you're going somewhere, are you going to a dinner party? Let me
Bring the
tell you.
marshmallows.
And just
See?
like opening it up and being like, you will be the most popular person at the party if you bring
Yes.
this. And all of a sudden it connects, because when they see it in the menu, they're like, oh, whatever, marshmallows.
You just brought up an interesting point. I was trying to explain to some retail folks about this as a segmenting issue, is that part of the problem is everyone talks about cannabis gift giving. I'm sorry, at this taxation level, you're delusional. Okay, you're delusional unless you segment.
Yep.
Okay, so who can afford hideously priced cannabis products in quantity to just give them away to people? Rich people.
Yep.
And this is the weirdest thing that I've noticed, is everyone's aiming down on the gift angle towards people who can't afford housing. Excuse me? You want to sell them a $400 laser vape? Wrong demographic.
Yep.
Why aren't you advertising uphill? Okay, that's a different category of customer. So you need to be reaching rich people, and it ain't in High Times. It's not in the Bud magazines. And so I think that the cannabis culture problem is, one, it's not hippies. Okay, take that out of the equation. It's not stoners. Take that out of the equation. It's not cannabis moms. It's everybody. Everybody is a demographic.
Yeah.
I know that's paralytic, but that's why theoretically with the population base we have, you can afford to be a niche. You don't have to be generic. Why? Because if I create a brand and I say this was grown by lesbian Buddhist monks on Salt Spring Island, harvested under a full moon, left to hang dry, ground by hand using mortar and pestle, and then hand stuffed lovingly into organic handmade paper tubes. That would be a brand. And there's enough people to buy it Canada wide, we would always sell out. Can I push this on everybody?
No.
No, not at all. There isn't enough cross-sectioning in the quality, the product, the strain, or anything to be a shotgun. But I can narrowcast that thing off my shelf. And turnover is the thing I don't really hear people talking about. It's nice when a state's lighting up. They tend to buy a lot of inventory, right? And that causes this false sense of success.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, the state lit up. We've shipped all this cannabis out. Well, wait till they send it back to you. Or worse, they discount it to get rid of it.
Or they destroy it because they haven't been able to get it off their
Sell
shelves.
it. Yes, that's exactly it. So never grow enough. Never make enough. Never produce enough. Deliberately self-constrain. Artificial supply constraint. It's a secret. Don't try to scale to extra capacity. Only buy the equipment that allows you to give yourself a headache of always being at maximum capacity. You'll pay for your equipment first, you'll pay it off super fast, and then you can buy another exact piece of that equipment and get a second person in because you already know how to use it. Okay? Don't figure that you can buy $1 million machine and pay for it doing other people's shit, because they don't want to pay you any more than you want to pay someone else to do your shit. And so tightly focus your own story. You can sell that. Selling someone else's story, oh, you got to hire salesmen for that. And they won't believe it either. It's just numbers, moving units. And then the bud tenders, they're just moving units because they were told to. That won't sell your brand. Be bold, be a cannabis house that intends to be on the shelf 100 years from now. Why? Because you became known as the go-to brand. When someone reaches in and picks up your joint, they have an experience. You become like a Monte Cristo or a Cohiba or a Partagas or a Fuente, a contained experience that the customer can bank on. Mm-hmm. That's what the brand is. Whatever the product was at that moment in time, who gives a shit? It was the relationship that you transacted and sold. That was the belief they bought, and it was true. They believed you. Don't fuck it up.
Yeah. I'm so glad we sat down and talked today. There's so much that we went over.
Thank you so much for being tolerant. This has gone way over your budget. I'm so sorry.
I'm always down for a good conversation, Renee. But
you can edit the shit out of this and find something.
No. This is going out as is. I think, the big takeaways, I think, are, be a differentiator, represent, don't be too available. Don't overshoot what you've got. You want people to be coming back for more and waiting for your next drop. And no, be aware if you are a minority owned or female owned business, the concept of code switching. And like we were talking about before we went on today, I actually hired a consultant to help me understand the language. Yep. So know your experts and get the help in that. And
code switching isn't lying. It's being careful with the bare truth, which seems to offend some people. That's all. You're actually being considerate about their sensitivities and prejudices. Just reframe it. It's not that you're being under attack. No. You're actually being a more nuanced entrepreneur. Rather than fighting an evil system, you're accounting for their baked-in biases, which they may not be aware of. Your job is to educate them to the potential that works around those biases. You're going to help them negotiate their way into the deal.
I love that.
You're not going to let them cop out.
Yep. Yeah, don't let them cop out. There's room for success. It's
Yeah.
for those of us who are feeling more, who are more feelers and are really passionate about it. It's about learning how to put that into terms for people to understand and want to bank on you.
Absolutely. And that's, I think that to be a true capitalist, if you're an investor and you say that you're a capitalist and you really do it, and a startup comes in front of you and they've shown you what they're doing, you honestly need to put your privilege behind that mealy mouth stuff that you tell other people about and actually say, what is your vision? You want to operate doing this thing? Okay, I'm going to call this an investment because that's how we have to paper it. But I'm really banking on you proving what you say. And because I believe in what you're trying to accomplish, we'll figure out the investment part later. Okay, the what it means out part of it. But right now, the best thing I can do is just believe in you, be in your corner, stand behind you so that you can go face the Capitol. You can do it with a full pocket, a full belly, and a full heart, and be able to fight that battle, because I can't do it. Okay, I can't get in front of that fight for you, but I am going to equip you with all the tools. And then when you do have that first setback, that fifth set, teach you how resilient you are. And I'm going to show you how you can't be broken, how you can't be kept out unless you choose to sit out. But it's okay if you're sitting out because you're wounded and you're hurt and you're broken and your heart's broken. But I need you to get back in. Everyone needs you. That's the truth. Everyone needs everyone in this industry to bring their A game. And we're all individuals. That's the secret.
Yeah.
That's it.
And if we work together, we can make some really amazing things happen, especially with creating better policy so that we can thrive as an industry and help serve
Yep.
all these people who want to take part. Renee, thank you. And thank you for your intelligence, your sensitivity, for sharing your journey and your story, and really showing that those of us who are out there that feel and have talent are very important, and we can thrive and survive.
I see you, I hear you, I want to celebrate you and everyone in this industry. This competition artificial. And that's what it is. It's this artificial sense of competition. We're an ecosystem entirely dependent on the goodwill of each other.
Yep.
We're entirely dependent on the safety of the herd against the government, against prohibition, against moral outrage, against litigation, all of it. We have to stick together. And that's, again, the competition. I get that there's not a lot of sunlight, but you don't drag people out of the sunlight just to crawl on top of them. Okay. This is where we got to learn to share. Okay. And sharing is hard when you're an adult. It may feel like you've been waiting a long time. And that makes people, I think, the worst of themselves, the worst versions of themselves. And we constantly have to remind ourselves that when we show up at work and we interact with other people in this industry, that may not be their best version of their self. Don't assume. This industry changes us, it transforms us, and under pressure can deform us. So give them the benefit of the doubt that given a better set of circumstances or a better choice or a better situation, they'd make healthier decisions, better statements out their mouth, maybe treat their staff differently. But we can't abandon people, we can't condemn them. This is about redemption and forgiveness in a certain sense, is that the prohibition wars and the damage caused is being compounded by fighting amongst ourselves and doing the work of prohibition. That's what breaks my heart, is that the infighting is hurting us more. The fact that there's no capital doesn't mean that we should kill and attack the people that get it.
Right.
We need to increase the flow of capital to more people, not blame the ones that get it or say that they're somehow insiders and that it's unfair and unjust. It creates an echo chamber where no one is credible at that point, where no one is deserving. We need to increase the tent, not constrict it. We need to expand the definition of cannabis, not narrow it.
I agree. I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to our future conversations, Renee. You're welcome back anytime.
Oh, thank you so much. This has been lovely. Thank you so much, and a very gracious use of your time.
Oh, thank you. And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sarah Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sarah on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsarah.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.